Elisia's eyes flickered slightly at the Empress's request. A mana stone? Isn't this the desire of your heart? No. Elisia looked at Franz with a desperate expression. He answered without hesitation. All right. Is that all? If you give me that, I will cancel the mana immediately. And I will return the pendant as well. Isn't this simple? The Empress smiled faintly and shrugged her shoulders. Franz stared at her, his lips pressed tightly together. As they faced each other, Elisia gathered her remaining strength into her hand. Just a little more. She could barely exert force, but lifting her hand was impossible. When her fingertips trembled, Franz took her hand. The Empress watched the two embracing as she lowered her eyes. How sentimental. After you hand over the mana stone, you two can go to the Ambrose territory and live there. I will provide the necessary funds to manage the territory. Elisia stared at the Empress, who spoke as if she were being generous. If the mana stone is taken away, Franz will die instantly. And yet, you tell them to go to Ambrose together? Her gesture, as if she were letting Franz go free, was repulsive. This wouldn't happen. Elisia poured strength into her hands, which Franz held. When she moved her fingers, he lowered his gaze at her, wary of the Empress. Franz's eyes widened when he spotted something in her hand. His shoulders stiffened, and the Empress frowned. What's wrong? The Empress's mana is so strong that one person cannot oppose her. But what if it is two people's mana combined? What if that is the case? Do you intend to summon someone? Is there someone you can ask for help from? Who in this palace possesses mana opposite to mine? Correct. Franz nodded calmly and slowly raised his head. He met the Empress's eyes. He locked gazes with her and slowly opened his mouth. I have a question. What is it? Why do you want to dispose of Crichton and me? You already possess everything. Well, let's say I understand. But Crichton is your son. He is not my son. He is an insect attempting to steal my throne. The Empress wore a bored expression. For the first time, her smile vanished completely from her face. She continued, her expression blank. It was good to subtly provoke Crichton and Glenna until they overthrew the Emperor. Thanks to that, I became regent. The Empress's eyes sparkled when she uttered the word will. It was also beneficial that you and Crichton fought each other for the crown prince. I was waiting for one of you to die, and then I would eliminate the other. As it stands now. The Empress finished speaking and smiled coldly. It was a frightening smile. She continued, smiling, come now, hand over the mana stone. The Empress arrogantly extended her hand toward Franz. But when she extended her hand fully, a soft click sounded, and the shackle around Elisia's neck released. The Empress frowned angrily upon seeing the necklace being unfastened. How? Hack. I survived. Elisia rose, panting. Franz embraced her and said, you said that two people's mana is enough. He finished speaking and opened his palm. In his hand lay a yellow sapphire ring. It is Ilian Corney's mana stone. It was the ring Elisia had exchanged when she signed the agreement with Glenna earlier. Ilian's mana is water. With the power of Franz's mana, fire mana could be neutralized. I brought it back up. Elisia stared at the Empress, panting. The Empress wore an expression as if possessed by a ghost. Her plan seemed to have collapsed, halting her thoughts for a moment. No wonder. She had been controlling and manipulating everything thus far. Even her son had served as one of her chess pieces. Without restraints in means or methods, she had always prevailed in the game. This must have been her first defeat. Now. Elisia untied the dagger bound to her sleeve with a trembling hand. She handed it to Franz. She whispered to him, inject mana into him. Quickly. At Elisia's whisper, Franz swiftly infused mana into the dagger. The dagger infused with ice mana glowed with a blue light. Franz seized the dagger and rose to his feet. His body glowed with a blue light. The Empress saw the blade in his hand and screamed wildly. Killing the Empress. Treason, treason. Franz held the sword solemnly. Then he lunged toward the Empress. His movement was swifter than the wind. Before the blade could pierce the Empress's heart, she seized his wrist. It was not normal, of course. Franz strained to drive the sword toward her chest, indifferent to her resistance. You. The Empress resisted desperately. I screamed madly. Even if you kill me, you will die. Killing the Empress is punishable by death. You need not worry about me. Franz said briefly and drove the dagger into the Empress's heart. The blade pierced her heart with a mysterious sound. Ah! A sharp scream tore through the air. The Empress tried to yank the dagger out with her hand. But before she could, a blue light spread from the sword embedded in her heart, and cold swiftly coursed through her body. The Empress was powerless against mana contrary to her nature. Her entire body froze. Her elegant face was hideously distorted. Cold ice, not a smiling mask, covered her face. Elisia held her breath as she watched the Empress meet her end. The Empress died in the same manner she had used against Elisia. At the moment of her death, even she could not smile. Elisia returned to the second prince's palace and collapsed onto the bed. The day had been exceedingly long. Her entire life had been hard, but today had been particularly stressful. Who? Elisia lay with her arms outstretched and her eyes closed. Franz, who had brought her here, departed to deliver the recording stone pin to Linden and Aaron. Do not open the door to anyone, no matter who they are. Franz repeated his warning several times as he carried her into the room. Elisia nodded weakly. In any case, she intended to comply. She was not in the mood to see anyone today. Now, only Franz remained. The revenge had concluded swiftly. I cannot believe it. Elisia sat on the bed and clasped her hands together. When she had initially plotted her revenge, it had seemed so far-fetched. She had wondered if she would be able to achieve it in this life. Crichton and Glenna had been at their peak, and Franz's political base had been weak. And Elisia. She had been nothing more than the second prince's wife, not much different from her previous life. Yet events had unfolded with startling speed. As if a tsunami had swept away everyone who stood in its path. Everything had proceeded so smoothly that she felt anxious. Was revenge truly accomplished? She felt confused. But revenge was certainly progressing smoothly. As if her future had been preordained in this manner. Thus, Elisia began to wonder if Bak's goal had been revenge. If fate had decreed it, all of this would have been a natural and inevitable flow. No, not that. Elisia shook her head. I hoped that was not the case. Because at the end of the path of revenge stood Franz. Elisia bit her lips in confusion. She gazed at the ceiling and breathed heavily. She retrieved the worry she had been hiding in a corner of her heart. She could no longer postpone confronting Franz's problem. How would she exact revenge on him? At first, she had definitely intended to kill him. But now, she hesitated. Her heart wavered. Elisia hated Franz. The feeling of betrayal was as profound as her love for him. But little by little, this feeling of betrayal faded. Because she realized that his guilt was not as heavy as she had initially thought. However, Franz behaved before her as if he had committed a crime worthy of death. He was prepared to sacrifice everything for her. If Elisia's life goal was revenge, Franz's life goal was Elisia. Franz seemed to live only for her. Despite suffering from the effects of retrogression, he did not ask her to be neutralized. Because he did not want Elisia to suffer from the effects of neutralization. What should I do? Elisia's brow furrowed. She was not going to forgive Franz. She could not quite forgive him. Whatever the reasons, the fact that he had neglected her and made her miserable in her previous life was real. But not forgiving did not necessarily mean he had to be killed, right? Everyone carries some hatred in their heart and lives. If everyone killed those they hated, the world would turn into a sea of blood. No, these were merely excuses. Elisia squeezed her eyes shut tightly. She kept making excuses for herself because she did not want to kill Franz. Elisia recalled Franz's face when she discovered she was pregnant and lost the baby. Please, don't forgive me. A face distorted with frustration and guilt. Hot tears did not cease flowing from his sharp eyes, and his voice, full of longing, said that he could not imagine her pain. Elisia sighed and placed her hand on her stomach. She lost herself in thought, stroking her stomach. After losing the baby, she had unconsciously caressed her flat stomach. Elisia raised her eyelids. She blinked with heavy eyes. I will think until Franz returns. Until then, I decided to grant myself a reprieve. Instead of resolving to kill him for revenge, I felt I needed to consider whether another path existed. Elisia rose, thinking along these lines. It had not been long since she had been exposed to the Empress's mana, so her body still ached. Elisia moved her heavy legs and headed to the dressing table. She remained dressed from her encounter with the Empress. She first wished to remove the hair ornaments and rest more comfortably. When Elisia removed a hairpin from her hair, a sound was heard. Her Highness the Second Princess? A voice called to her from behind the door. Elisia froze, holding the pin. Her green eyes, as she stared in the mirror, reflected a worried glint.